Look at this beautiful quilt I just made. It is a wall hanging and the pattern is by, lo and behold, Brittany Lloyd, and it is called Knitted Blooms. Look at that. It is an edge-to-edge design that I quilted on my long arm Q-Zone Queen rolling frame with a QCT6 Elite long arm. Have you been wanting to do a long arm quilting, or are you even interested? If you're interested, stick around and I'll show you how I learned. Believe it or not, I've only been quilting for a couple months, so I'll share my experience with you. In a previous video, I shared the piecing of this beautiful design, and this video I'm going to show you the actual quilting. But if you're interested in the piecing one as well, I'll attach it as a link at the end of this video for you. The first step in the process is to pick your backing, and your backing needs to be at least 4 inches wider on each side, so top, bottom, left, and right, for it to fit on the long arm and have plenty of room for your quilting area. That's called your safe space. Here I'm showing you that I found the center of my backing, and the bottom of the fabric is going on the bottom leader, the belly bar leader first. And these are Sew Tight magnums that I use. And so I'm putting those on, and it's so much easier than penning. I'll be honest with you, at first I wasn't sure it was worth the money, but now that I've used them a couple times, I can see how quickly I'm able to get my quilt loaded versus all the penning, and I'm not accidentally sticking myself, because I have accidentally poked myself a couple times, and I'm an easy bleeder, and that's not good to bleed on someone's quilt. So this was something that I gave a try, and I'm happy I did. I also did a video on the Sew Tight magnums that you can take a look at, and I have it in my Amazon storefront if you're interested in buying them. So here I'm starting to get ready to roll my fabric up. And I find it easiest if I put my fabric over the other bar and then I start rolling. Look at that tension I'm already getting. And it rolls on nice and even. I really like doing it this way. Now it's time to load the top of my quilt. And I just go along, and I'm making sure that the top of my quilt is aligned with the hem of the leader. And then I just put on the magnums one at a time and work my way down. I also wanted to point out that I always start from the center and work my way out. I do that on both the top and the bottom to ensure that I'm getting it nice and straight. Now I'm rolling it up and I'm trying to get the tension that I want. See how it's nice and taut, but not too tight. Next, I add my side clamps. My side clamps are made with extra fabric, nothing fancy. But if I put the bungee cords clear up on my actual quilt, sometimes they get in the way, and my long arm bumps the clamps. So I just added fabric pieces just to keep them to do their job but not get in the way. Earlier I did load my batting on, and I forgot to put it in the video. But here I am stitching a straight line across the top of my batting so that I can eventually put my quilt top on it and align the quilt top along that stitch line that I'm making here. Do you hear that annoying beeping sound? That's my machine telling me I'm going too fast. I can turn it off, but I haven't done that yet because I feel I'm still too new, and I do slow down and try to listen to my machine, but I didn't do a very good job of it here. Haha. Some of you are probably wondering how I stitched a straight line to begin with, but I put my channel locks on and it will only allow me to go left to right, and it makes me stitch a straight line. So that's the secret. Next, I'm putting my quilt top on, and notice I'm lining it up with that stitch line that I just did. And I'm laying it out. I centered it on my batting. I also have plenty of room with left to right. I didn't leave as much at the top because I have a leader. If you don't have a leader cloth, then of course your fabric is going to act as your leader and gives you extra room on your long arm. But I do have leaders, so I can stitch closer to the top of my fabric. Right now I'm stitching my quilt top down. Once again, I have my channel locks on, so I'm going to be stitching straight across the top to secure my quilt top to my batting and my backing. I also stitched down the sides of my quilt, but I forgot to videotape it. Sorry about that. Here I'm trying to put on my 1-inch clamps, and notice that it's a little bit too tight. They won't go on, so I'm moving up to my 2-inch clamps. Or no, excuse me, my 1.5-inch clamps. They're the blue ones. I was going to buy the ones that go all the way across my belly bar, but I found that by buying these that come in separate little pieces, I can rearrange them the way I want and get just the right tension that I need. These are also in my Amazon storefront if you're interested. They're by the Grace Company. Next, I'm showing you the actual quilt top here. I added a serged edge along my quilt. I felt that it really held my quilt together and prevented it from stretching. And notice how I got that right along the line of my stitching on my batting. When I first turn on my computer, I make sure that I take it off the Wi-Fi and put it in airplane mode. That's very important as your first step. And I'm showing you here, right there, I'm switching it over. Next, I'm opening up my automation. It's the Quilt Motion QCT6 by the Grace Company. And I'm in no way sponsored by the Grace Company. I just happen to love their products. I moved my long arm over to the center of my frame, and right now it's going to recalibrate. Here the program is opening up, and I pick, of course, edge to edge because that's the only thing that I have in this program. There are other units that you can buy, but I just have the edge to edge tier, the basic tier, but I love it. Right now I'm picking my safe zone, and you have to go all the way to the left, upper left corner of your quilt for your safe area, and then you mark it. I'm getting ready to mark it here. Next, I move my long arm over to the lower right area, clear over to the edge of my batting. This sets the boundaries of the entire quilt. That includes the backing and the batting. Now it's time for me to pick my design. This is one of my favorite parts. I do have a favorite one in here. The one that I'm picking is a very dense design, so I want to set the pattern height to 8 inches. Once I pick 8 inches, then it's going to ask me how close do I want these pattern pieces to be, and I keep moving them together until there's no space between each pattern. You'll look here and there's a space. See that space there? I don't want that space, so I'm going to delete it. So now I'm showing you the pattern where there is no negative space. They're butted up against each other. And if you hit the info button, it shows exactly what you just did. And I usually take a picture of that. The reason I take a picture of it is just in case I have to stop in the middle of my design. I can go back and reset it exactly like this. So I picked the spiraling wavy edge to edge, and this shows everything that I just showed you. Now we're going to set the quilt top edges. See those gray nodes? We want to turn those green by picking the edges of our quilt. And I'm just showing you right here what I mean by the edge. I place my long arm foot right there, and then I press that node to green. Then I go down to the lower left edge of the quilt and I make that green. Here I'm showing going across the quilt so that you can actually see an actual visual of what I just did. And I put it on the edge, and then I hit that bottom node and turn it green. And now I'm going to move my foot clear up to the top right of the quilt and click on the upper right node, and that's setting the edges of my quiltable space on my long arm at this time. Then I hit next. Now we need to set our placement markers for that row. See these green dots? We're going to actually mark them on our quilt area. We need to make sure that we're marking our left and our right placement markers. So I will do this with a heat erasable pen. So I click on the left marker and my machine will automatically move to that left spot. It's moving by itself. It will stop, and then I will hit the button that says stitch. That's going to bring up my bobbin. See, I'm pressing that button. Did you see the needle move up and down? And I'm sorry I'm in the way, but what I'm doing is pulling up my bobbin. I'll show you here on the other marker a little bit better, but I'm marking it with a heat erasable pen where that bobbin thread came up through the batting. Hope you can see it. It's really hard to see on there, and I'm sorry, but I have a pen mark right there where that bobbin thread came up. So that's one placement line for that row. Now I'm moving my long arm over to the right side to put my right placement marker on my batting. So I'm hitting the stitch mark, or actually I'm hitting the right placement mark, and the machine is moving by itself. And now it stopped, so I'm going to hit stitch. And my bobbin is pulled up. And I'm marking that placement line with my heat erasable marker. So next we're getting ready to stitch our design. I always move my machine over because I know it's the next step. I move it over, but if I hadn't, the machine will move over to the left by itself. I press next, and it's taken me over to the spot where it's going to stitch. And watch, it'll move by itself and place a stitchment mark. See, it moved? That's where it's going to start. And it pulled up my bobbin thread. So I just pull my tail, bobbin tail up, and I'm getting ready to stitch here any minute. So then I press next. And then I press sew. And right now it is putting tack down stitches. And then it's going to take off sewing. And this is my favorite part. It is so mesmerizing. I just love watching this stitch out. And if you take a close look here, it is stitching exactly down the edges of that quilt. Look at that. It knows exactly where to stitch. And then as it goes up to the top of the design, it'll only go to the edge of the quilt on the top. Now the reason that it's not a full 8 inches here is due to the fact that I selected quilt top versus middle. In the middle you'll get a full 8 inches for the middle design, but I picked a quilt top so that it would shift the design up so there's no empty space and it would quilt right to the edge. The next row that we do, I'll show you that step because I missed it in the photos so that you'll understand the difference. But look, it's going right up to the edge of that quilt, going across and down again. And here's on the other end. Just right there on the edge. Look at that beautiful design. Next I hit continue. I move my needle off to the right and I hit stitch. And what's that? That's going to bring up my bobbin thread so that I can snip it off. I'm reaching for my scissors here and I'm going to snip off that bobbin thread so it disconnects from below, and I snip it off of my top thread off of the quilt edge there. And then I hit next. And now it's going to move the machine to the next placement marker. Notice I have my heat erasable pen. We're getting ready to set the second row. So I hit stitch with my marker there, and it put a stitch line, a stitch marker, and I'm pulling up my bobbin thread and I'm placing my marker with a pen. Now, this is a repeat step that we've done earlier, but what we're doing is setting our second row. And I'm showing you that placement marker right there. Next, we're going to move the long arm over to the left and place another placement line for our next row. See, it says next. Now, if I hadn't moved it over by myself and I pressed next, it would have moved all by itself. But I'm just giving it a head start. So it's going to move. I'm getting ready to place my left placement marker. I hit the stitch button. My needle went in. It pulled up the bobbin, and now I'm going to mark that area where that bobbin thread came up through. And then I hit next. And it's telling me I don't have enough area to stitch my next row, so now I have to move my fabric. I think this is what I love most about this program. It tells you step by step what to do. There's no way to make a mistake. So here I'm taking off my side clamps. And now it's time to roll my fabric down from the belly bar. I'm moving it down to give it some slack, and I'm rolling it up at the top. So here I am repositioning my quilt top, smoothing out my batting, removing any loose threads that might be there, and I'm refluffing my quilt top and spreading it out and making sure that it's nice and straight. See how I have the line of my pattern there? It's perfectly on that belly bar. So now I want to baste down the sides of my quilt, and I have full control. It's called Release Machine, and I have full control so I can do all my basting. So here I'm snipping my bobbin away from my thread there so that I can move over to the other side and not waste thread as I drag it over. And now I'm basting down the other side of my quilt. Here I decide that my 1-inch white clips will work better now that I have less fabric on my poles, so I am adding the white ones now. That's the beauty of having different size clips. And then I have to remember to put on my side clamps next. I won't make you watch me putting on side clamps again since we've already done that step. You know what I mean. Now I need to pick the middle of the quilt design. Remember I said I missed the top of the quilt to show you? That's the area. And now I need to find the edges of my quilt. I need to turn those gray nodes green. So I go to the top left edge of my quilt, and I'm going over to that placement marker and then over to the edge of my quilt, and I'm hitting the gray node. See, it shifted over. That's showing the edge of my quilt. Now I'm going to shift down to the bottom edge, bottom left edge of my quilt as far as I can go, and I marked the left placement node. Now I'm moving over to the right side and placing my lower right placement node, then moving up to the top right and placing that placement node. See, and this is a repeat of what we've done before, so I hope it's starting to make sense. And now we have to find our placement markers. See how that pattern goes off of the edge and those gray nodes are there? That's where I have to find my placement for that row. So my machine is telling me to go find my left placement node marker where I made that marking pen. See, it's right there in the center of my foot, and I'm going to hit the gray node to turn it green. Now I'm moving over to the right side, and I'm finding that heat erasable pen mark that I made, putting my presser foot right on top of it and hitting that mark. That's placing my next row. And let's say that I wanted to stop through the night and turn my machine off. This is what I would do. I would find my placement nodes and start the row. So there's no way to mess it up. You can take a break, you can stop, and then as long as you have your placement marks, you can start your next row. So now my machine is getting ready to stitch. It's going into place. It made my stitch mark, and I'm pulling up my bobbin. It's moving it back into place, and I hit sew. There's my tack down, and now I'm stitching the second row. Isn't that awesome? So here I'm showing you how each row lines up perfectly. See this circle? If you take a look, the circle above it is in the exact same alignment. Look at that. It's a perfect placement. Here's another circle to show the same thing. And look at that circle. It's in the same exact area. This is the actual screen that shows what is being stitched out. So the dark blue has already been stitched. Next, you repeat your placement rows all the way down to the end of your quilt. And when I got to the end of my quilt, I had to baste it into place. So I went down the left edge, and now I'm going across the bottom. And I'm just taking my time, stretching it. See how I stretch it a little bit to ensure that there's no puckers. I'm just kind of slowly pulling with my hands, my fingers, and then I move my way up the edge. And I get it basted into place. This ensures there's no movement when we go to stitch that final row. And here I'm showing you the basted edges. Now remember when on my screen I had the option for quilt top, quilt middle, or quilt bottom? Well, this time I picked the quilt bottom, and as it's stitching along, I'm just pressing with my fingers to give it a little bit of extra tension, and it's stitching right along the bottom edge of that quilt. Here I'm showing you those beautiful stitches, how it goes just directly along the edge. No wasted thread. Beautiful stitches. Next, I'm getting ready to take my quilt off of the machine, and here I'm cutting the extra batting off so that I don't waste it, and then I'm just going to fold it up and put it in my stash. Now it's time to unload by taking off my Sew Tight magnums. I first take them off my belly bar, and then since they're magnet, I just stick them on the edge of my frame there. Then I unroll the top a little bit and I place it over my belly bar, and I continue to unroll, and I keep straightening out because I don't want it to fall on the ground. Keep unrolling until I get to those next magnets, and I pull those off. Look how fast this is versus all that pinning and unpinning. So I place those at the end of my long arm, and voila, look how beautiful. Here are some pictures. Now in the next video, I'll show you how I finish the quilt with binding. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hope to see you in the next video.